Hi everyone, this is Dayu from EcommOps. Today I want to talk about the coronavirus and the current impact on ePacket and other China shipping. Now this is up to date as of March 19th, 2020. Things are always changing, so if you want more up-to-date news, please join our Facebook group, the EcommOps Facebook group linked below. Today we're going to talk about a couple things. So first, we're going to talk about a very quick update on the coronavirus situation globally. That's as of March 19th, 2020. We're going to talk about the general impact on the entire logistic chain from China all the way to the US or other countries. We're going to talk about how ePacket and other China shipping is affected. And finally, we're going to talk about how you should react and what you should do in this time if you are dropshipping or if you are fulfilling from China. Alright, so let's start on a quick update on the general situation. Now, this is not a news YouTube channel, so for more up-to-date information, please check your local or national news. So first, the good news. In China, everything is pretty much starting to stabilize, except the very epicenter of where the outbreak started, and that is the Wuhan and Hubei area and surrounding. Although that is obviously still going to impact a lot of lives in China right now, much of China has rebounded and has very much stabilized, and people are actually going outside. Restaurants and small businesses are starting to reopen. And thankfully, for us and for you guys, what you care about is most of the suppliers and factories, they are actually based in areas outside of the still restricted area. So in terms of China, everything is pretty much back operational, although there might just be some limitations and some delays in factories and suppliers being able to produce and fulfill orders on time. So do expect some delays, but it really depends on your own factory and supplier situation. Now, unfortunately, as most of you have known by now, is that the coronavirus has been spreading rapidly around the world, and many countries have been locking down to various degrees. I won't go through all of them right now, but a lot of countries are facing issues right now and they are locking down. And from our own experience from the China outbreak, this is a necessary thing to do. We really want this around the world to be controlled as fast as possible. And right now really is the time to act and to practice social distancing and to make sure that there are no large gatherings and people stay home as much as possible. Things are evolving by the day though, so please check your local news to make sure that you always have the most up-to-date information. Passenger flights have been canceled worldwide, both to and from China and also just really all around the world from the US to the EU. And obviously this is going to affect air travel, but this is also going to affect logistics as well, as a lot of logistics services from China, such as ePacket, does actually depend on passenger flights as opposed to freight lines. However, I personally do believe that there is an initial shock period right now where everything is locking down and people are worrying about the economy. And that being said, if China's outbreak and trend were to be a template, I personally do believe that e-commerce is going to stay strong for the rest of the year. There's a lot of belief that people are going to be at home. They can't go shopping outdoors. They can't go to malls. And at least what happened in China was that after the initial fear, the initial shock, people stayed at home, people got bored, they bought more online. And I think this is going to happen around the world as well. So I know for some of you, your ads are very inconsistent right now. Actually, some of you are actually doing very, very well right now. But please be patient. Try to get through this tough period. And I do believe once everything stabilizes in terms of lockdowns, at least, people are going to start buying again and maybe even more than before. Let's talk about the general impact on the logistic chain as of March 19th, 2020. So I think one piece of good news is that countries around the world, even if they are locking down, they do consider local post office service to be a very basic essential service that is not going to be locked down. At least on the US side, USPS is not planning to disrupt its services. A lot of European post services are not going to be disrupted. Australian post, Canada post. So far, there is no belief that anything will be disrupted, at least at a significant degree. Because local post services, it really is a basic essential need for a lot of countries. That's how people get their mail. That's how people get very important things, right? So we do believe that local post offices are not going to shut down, or even if they do shut down, it'll be a very limited period, and there's no news of that yet. That being said, please do expect delays. Things are going to be a little bit less efficient, but we're probably talking about a couple of days delays. We're not talking about week-long delays, something getting stuck at USPS, right? And don't forget, the customers that are living in these areas, they get it. They know if services are down. They know if services are slow. So if USPS or whatever local post does get delays, your customers are going to understand. So don't worry too much about local post offices. Now, there's going to be a couple exceptions. A lot of Italy is still relatively limited in terms of their postal services. They are technically still accepting goods, but there's a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of delays, so I wouldn't market to Italy right now. Some limited parts of Spain as well face the same issue, but the rest of the world, so far, we haven't seen any issues with local post offices, the last mile delivery that a lot of couriers use after they leave China. Freight planes should not shut down, but again, expect some delays. I really believe that it is going to be almost impossible for global trade to shut down. A lot of borders are getting closed down, passenger planes are getting shut down. But we have to remember that most, if not all, countries out there, they depend on imports, they depend on freight planes, they depend on trade in order to actually operate basic life. I believe that if they do shut down freight lines, I think it would be absolutely devastating to the global economy and to the economy of that country. So I'm not saying it's not guaranteed, but my point is if freight lines shut down, then we probably have a much bigger thing to worry about than business. Generally speaking, our own shipping from China has been very reliable. Now, when I say reliable, I mean that it's not getting stuck, it's not getting major delays. We do see some delays occasionally for certain countries, maybe 1 day, 2 day, 3 day delays. But going back to my point earlier, that is not because of going from China to the US or China to the EU. It is more because of certain inefficiencies caused right now in the local post offices of those countries. So do expect some delays, but at least the line that we're using, that is Yunexpress from Shenzhen through Hong Kong, any delays that we see are going to be more a couple days and not necessarily a week or longer. But this is just us. Every supplier is going to be different. I do know for a fact that a lot of suppliers out there in different regions are really struggling with their shipping methods. So again, this is just us. Make sure that you find out your own situation from your own supplier. Now, as I mentioned before, there are two countries to be careful of. All of Italy right now has a lot of postal disruptions, and then a couple regions in Spain. So I have the postal codes here that we had an announcement for couriers. I would personally suggest, if you don't have to, definitely don't market or ship to Italy right now. You can still ship to most of Spain, actually, but just be careful of these specific zip codes below in this slide. As a side note, a lot of you always ask me about US or local fulfillment. Now, I think that this is something you really have to be careful of in terms of considering it as an alternative. This is an email that we received from ShipBob warning us of potential disruptions in their fulfillment process. ShipBob is a very large US-based fulfillment service that has their own warehouses. The reason being is that even though postal services, USPS, for example, even though they're considered essential services that cannot be locked down, fulfillment businesses in the US or in the EU are going to be a little bit different. Fulfillment businesses, if they're in an area where there is a total lockdown, we would expect delays in their processing, if not maybe completely disrupted. So if you think that the solution right now is to send 5,000 units of your product to ShipBob or to a local fulfillment warehouse, I'll tell you right now that that has a certain level of risk as well. And I personally would not recommend it because you don't want all that inventory to be stuck in that warehouse and you either see significant delays or for whatever reason that warehouse does shut down. All right, so how does all of this actually affect ePacket and other China shipping methods? So ePacket, simple, do not use it right now, or at least do not trust it right now if you do use it. ePacket, or anything else that really depends heavily on passenger airlines, which includes ePacket, China Post, EMS, or really anything out there that depends on passenger flights, they are severely delayed. We've had a lot of warnings from our couriers telling us that for pretty much most of the top countries that you would want to serve, to expect indefinite delays. That's indefinite delays. So, I mean, hey, honestly, you could get lucky. You could have some packages get there in a reasonable time. But the thing is, the way that I always think about the fulfillment business is that you can't plan for the best case. You always have to plan for the worst case. And right now, the worst case is that your products are going to be stuck somewhere. They're not going to get on a plane and they will be delayed indefinitely. So we're not talking about weeks here, indefinitely. And the couriers are telling us that directly. So if you value good shipping, if you value consistent customer service, do not use ePacket right now. However, anything that uses freight lines that are sending out from China should be okay. Now, personally, our favorite is Yunexpress. I feel like I talk about them so much that I'm their affiliate, but I'm not really. The reason why we use them is because they've always proven to be very, very reliable, and they use freight lines, and the freight line that we use actually goes out of Hong Kong, which is going to be much more dependable than anything that goes from China. But that being said, there are other special lines out there. We don't use them very much, so we can't really recommend any. So if you're working with other suppliers who talk about special lines that use freight planes, I mean, make sure they use freight planes, then definitely you can consider using them. Now, one thing to note though is that all these freight lines are currently quite a bit more expensive than before. And this is somewhat of a good thing. I mean, it's good and bad, right? I mean, it's bad because everything is more expensive, but the good thing is that they are expensive so that they can bid on freight space on planes, so they can remain competitive, so that they can continue to serve you and your customers and try to meet their estimated delivery time. So things are going to be a little bit more expensive, but it's simple supply and demand. They have to pay more to get there at the same time. So if you really care about that, then just one of the things that you have to deal with. Now, on the other hand, if you are using Aliexpress Standard is actually a pretty decent option right now, relatively speaking at least, because Aliexpress, they actually use their own logistics system. They use freight planes, so they're going to be much less affected by something like ePacket. That being said, as always, expect some delays during this period. Freight planes in many countries, they are getting disinfected as they come in, which might add, half a day to a day or so. So not major, but still add a day or two to your timeline to what you usually expect just to be safe. All right, so then what do you do about this, right? How should you react if you are dropshipping or fulfilling from China? If you are using Aliexpress, then use Aliexpress Standard shipping. Normally, I do not recommend it that much because many times it tends to be more expensive. It's not really better than ePacket, and usually it's a little bit slower, but it's not much. But these days, as I said earlier, they do use freight planes. They do have their own logistics network, so they're going to be much more reliable than ePacket. And I've actually heard a lot of folks saying that even their AliExpress seller is telling them that they shouldn't be using ePacket and they should swap to AliExpress Standard shipping as well. Some people are kind of hesitant to believe them, but hey, trust me, not all AliExpress sellers are bad. When they tell you something, then they're not always lying to you. So, hopefully you can trust me, but use AliExpress Standard shipping. Now, if you are using AliExpress and you are starting to get consistent orders, then definitely swap to an agent as soon as possible because AliExpress is usable right now, but definitely in this period, you definitely want to use an agent who has an access to some kind of special line that uses freight. We are an agent as well. If you want to work with us, if you have more than 50 orders per day, our link is below and we'll be happy to talk and help you scale during this period. If you are using an agent, use Yunexpress. There's other special lines out there, but we use Yunexpress for tens or probably hundreds of thousands of orders, and it works great for us, and it works great for us now, even during these periods. So if you have a choice, opt for Yunexpress. Couple things to note though is that make sure that your agent actually has experience using Yunexpress before. Yunexpress is very much a B2B type of company, and if an agent is not at high volume, doesn't have a good relationship with them, you're not going to get the same efficiencies. If you by the way want to learn more about Yunexpress, check out a link I have below talking about ePacket versus Yunexpress. The other thing about Yunexpress is that ideally you work with an agent who is actually based in Shenzhen and they're sending out of Hong Kong. That is going to be the most reliable line right now. However, we actually do have a fulfillment office in Yiwu, Zhejiang area as well, and we actually do find that the Shanghai to the EU and UK Yunexpress line is also quite reliable right now. But don't use it for the US, don't use it for Australia, don't use it for Canada. For global, worldwide Yunexpress shipping, try to use an agent shipping with Yunexpress out of Shenzhen. And this part is very, very important. Manage your customer expectations. They will understand. I mean, this is a generational disaster happening right now. Everyone is locked down. Businesses are shutting down. Post offices are still working, but everyone is going to understand if local post offices get delayed. Again, if you are able to use something like AliExpress Standard for AliExpress, if you are able to use something like a special line like Yunexpress, your packages should be able to get into the country okay. So whatever delays are going to happen are going to be possibly getting processed through customs, as maybe those offices are limited, or it's going to be local post offices that are going to be limited. So, here is just some recommended messaging. Say something like, due to the pandemic, shipping may be delayed. We are sending out orders normally, but your local post office might experience slight delays. Please stay up to date with the news regarding your local services to find out if your services may be affected. Obviously, you don't have to use all these words, but something like this to manage your customer expectations is going to help you a lot. Because what I always tell my clients is, customers, they do not get upset or ask for refunds just because shipping is delayed. They get upset if you promise them a week and it doesn't come for another 2 weeks and they don't know why. So I would recommend everyone to just put a little blurb on your product page, in your confirmation emails, just to let them know, hey, you understand the situation. Please be patient with us. We're sending out normally, but your local post offices might take a little bit longer than usual. And then finally, these apply during the normal times as well, but especially now. But here are a couple things that you really want to still be careful of. So first, make sure your supplier or seller actually has stock or they can restock quickly. There is a lot of demand for certain goods, and factories are operational, but they're not 100%. So make sure that your supplier is actually stocked up well, or is planning to restock for your scaling needs. Make sure that your supplier is not giving your tracking numbers too early. I mean, this is a very common supplier trick when they know they don't have stock, so they just give you tracking numbers early and nothing happens for a week or two, right? Make sure they don't do that. I mean, sometimes you can't help it. I get it, right? But to my point before on managing your customer expectations, it's okay if things are delayed due to the situation, but if you give them a tracking number and there's no information for a week or 2 weeks, that's when they're going to be unhappy. So make sure to get real tracking numbers from your suppliers. And then whoever you use, try to get recent tracking number examples for the countries that you plan to ship to, for the countries that you plan to ship to, and for their specific service that you want to use. Just to make sure, because honestly speaking, a lot of suppliers, they tend to tell you one thing and they're not really true, but just make sure they have actual examples of tracking numbers for what you're going to use, so you have at least some level of confidence. And then finally, over communicate with your supplier or your seller or your logistics partner, whatever it might be. Everything is literally changing on a day-by-day basis. So make sure that you're always communicating, making sure that you get the most updated information so that you can plan your business and plan how to deal with your customers as well. All right, so thank you guys for listening. I know this is a very unfortunate situation for everyone, and I really wish that I could spend this time to do what I plan to do, which is actually provide you guys with more meaningful content in terms of operations and logistics. But this is a very unique time right now, so at least for the interim, I'm going to really try to focus on updates on the coronavirus situation and various ways that you can actually react accordingly. So next up, I am actually planning a video on how you should be thinking about and using Aliexpress during this period so that you can at least have a head start in terms of testing new products before everything gets better and you can scale. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications as well. Please like this video as well if you like the update. And then finally, we do have a Facebook group where I provide more regular updates. So all of that is in the link below. And if you are ready to scale in this period, we are still accepting new clients. If you have more than 50 orders per day, check out our link below. Come talk to us. We're going to work with you and we're going to help you scale through this very uncertain period. All right, thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening. And until next time, this is Dayu from EcommOps. See you guys later.